So to value a business in a divorce, we would normally hire a CPA, a certified public accountant, to help us do that valuation. They're going to ask for certain financial documents such as tax returns, bank records, things like that. The time that it takes to complete that will depend on how quick you get the information to the CPA. It's obviously going to depend on how busy they are, but hopefully we can get a quick turnaround and get that business valued so that we can move your case forward. You're asking if you can manipulate the numbers on a business evaluation, and you can try to do that. And if you give incorrect information to the CPA who's valuing the business, I think you're doing a disservice to them and to yourself. And then obviously, if your spouse hires an expert who sees that the deceit is there, then that's going to be called out. And once that all comes out in court, that will not end very favorable to you. So if you have a business and you have several partners and you're going through a divorce, the first thing you want to do is obviously be open with your partners about what's going on. And then you want to make sure that you're aware of the agreement that outlines the business. A lot of times, for example, in an LLC, that would be the operating agreement. So you want to make your partners aware of that. And then you also want to make sure, how much percentage ownership you do have in the company, because that's what we're looking at to value in the divorce, because your partner's share of ownership in the company is not part of an asset that could be divided in a divorce. So if you own a business and you have a 50% ownership with other partners, it doesn't necessarily mean that your spouse is going to become an owner of the business, but what the court's going to be looking at is what's the value of that business, and is the spouse entitled to part of the share of that business. So first, you and your partner should have really solid documents outlining the formation of your business and what would happen in the case one of the partners did get divorced. So that's on the business side of things. And then once we're looking at the divorce, a lot of times the court's going to be looking at what's the value of that person's percentage of the business and what's the spouse's share of that. I don't think courts a lot of times want to make spouses business partners in the end because they were not able to maintain a marriage together. So yeah, a prenuptial agreement can protect a business. So if the time you get married that you have the business already in existence, you can specifically set forth the name of the business and who it will go to in the event of a divorce. But what you can also do in a prenuptial agreement is talk about future owned assets, and that could be a business. And you can provide that in the event of a divorce, that business stay with whichever spouse started or owns that business. So postnuptial agreements are something that do happen. That's once two people are married and didn't have a prenuptial agreement, but they've encountered some marital difficulties. Oftentimes they will enter into a postnuptial agreement. And just like its counterpart, the prenuptial agreement, you need to make sure both attorneys have independent counsel and understand the agreement. But if you do have a postnuptial agreement, that is something you can set forth in that agreement as to who gets the business if the marriage ultimately dissolves. So the business debt and how it impacts the divorce settlement. So sometimes you have anything from just a single member business that's not set up as a corporation, and sometimes those debts for the business may actually be incurred in the spouse's name. So that's something the court would have to take in consideration in doing a division of the marital estate. But sometimes when you get larger businesses or businesses that are set up in some form of a company structure, that debt will be dealt with in the valuation of the business. And let's just say, you've got a company set up, Sally Smith LLC, and that business has debts, but that business also has revenue and things like that, then that CPA is going to be looking at that all together as a totality to value that business, to come up with a number to say this is what this person's percentage interest in this business is worth. So they consider not only the income and the assets, but they will also consider the debts. So when you have a business in a divorce and there's an evaluation done, and let's just say the CPA comes back and says that one spouse, their equity in that business or the value of it, say $100,000. Well, if they can't pay the other spouse out their share, and let's just say the court says it's to be $50,000, then we could look to other assets that spouse might get in lieu of that business. So if you own a business, even if it's just set up as a sole proprietor or it's something more complex like an LLC or a corporation, it's important that you understand how that business may be valued and how that affects your divorce. So please call us at Mandy Hancock Law and we will be glad to schedule a consultation with you to understand your rights and responsibilities.